2024 MLB free agency is almost upon us, and you know what that means. Teams are about to get reckless with their money and make moves that they will live to regret later. I don't know what it is with the MLB offseason, but there's always a few teams that think we are one or two big moves away from actually competing next year. Let's make these moves and see things shake. And the only thing that shakes is their fans' fists as that contract becomes a damning thing to the team, to where this contract hinders the team, it doesn't help the team. Now I'm here to ask you a question. What has been some of the worst return on investments as far as free agency spending in the last 5 years? But we do also have to note that because of the shortened 2020 season, some of these players would have accumulated more value had they had the opportunity, but we know the real world exists and things happen. So you will need to factor that in with coming into this video. But unfortunately, that's life, and some of these teams spent on players and their best year was that shortened season and it wasn't anything else, and their return on investment is worse because of that. So I did want to be on record for saying that. So how I'm going to do this video is I have accumulated their total WAR they have earned throughout this contract so far, and then I divided by how many years they served to get their average yearly WAR. And these players that I'm going to talk about, their average yearly WAR stems from below 2 WAR to some of them are even negative. These contracts have not helped these teams. They've either been a little bit of a hindrance to an albatross. Now I'm going to go in the order from most valuable to least valuable, but yeah, I wanted to let you know how this was calculated, and I did want to factor that the 2020 season does hinder some of these longer contract players in being able to accumulate total WAR. But with all that said, if you do enjoy the content analysis that I give with Paint the Black Baseball, maybe you give me a like and subscribe, and if not, I wish you your best in your future endeavors. But let's get into this. So honorable mention number 1 is Josh Donaldson, who averaged a 1.375 yearly WAR for the contract that he signed. The contract that Josh Donaldson signed was a 4-year, $92 million contract with the Minnesota Twins on January 14th, 2020. But if you look at this transactions list, he was traded to the New York Yankees. In his last year of the deal, he was released by the Yankees and then picked up by the Brewers. He had an average salary value of $23 million. And then we take a look at his numbers. First season, in the shortened season, he had a .8 WAR. It was solid. Then he had his best season in 2021 when he put up 126 WRC plus 3 WAR. He was then traded to the Yankees. He accumulated a 1.7 WAR, mostly because of his defense. He was below league average hitting. And then in his final year, he fell off a cliff and provided 0 value. He also was injured, but when he came back, he was only hitting 152. So is this contract a complete albatross? No. But was it a good contract? Also no. This is a contract where a team was like, we got a little value, but then he ended up not helping. I feel like if Josh Donaldson did have a full 2020 year, this contract could potentially not be on the list. But hey, he did, and he's on this list as an honorable mention. I don't think this contract was an albatross. It was just not a great contract. Next up, the next honorable mention is an albatross to me because there's going to be more years. This is Javier Baez, who has accumulated a 1.35 WAR average so far. On November 20th, 2021, he signed a 6-year, $140 million contract with the Detroit Tigers. We take a look at the contract details. He has an average salary of $23.3 million. He did have an opt-out after this season, but given the fact that I'm making this video of him on it, he's definitely not going to opt out. Let's take a look at his numbers since becoming a Detroit Tiger. It has been disgusting. He accumulated a 1.9 WAR his first year. Most of that was because of his defensive value. He was hitting below league average with an 88 WRC plus. But his 2023 season, and why I say this contract is going to be a complete albatross, this man accumulated a 0.8 WAR, and it's only because of his defense. He hit 61 WRC plus. That is horrible. That's almost 40% below league average, bro. You cannot be a major league hitter hitting like that. So if he doesn't regain his value, it's to the point that the Tigers are eventually not going to be able to play him. They're either going to have to give up prospects to dump him or just eat the contract. But as of now, unless Javier Baez has a resurgence next year, this contract is a complete albatross. Coming in tied for 10th place with a yearly WAR average of 1.3 we have Starling Marte, who signed a 4-year, $78 million contract with the New York Mets on November 27th, 2021. He will be signed with them through the age 36 season. That's 2025. If we take a look at his numbers, his first year was really good with a WRC plus of 134. That's something to write home about. Basically 3 WAR value. He wasn't bringing it defensively, but the reason he's on this list, his previous 2023 season, he brought in a negative WAR. This guy had a 76 WRC plus. He continued to be a bad defender. Now, you know it was bad because the Mets were trying to dump anyone worth of value, and they weren't even able to trade Marte because he has no value. In 2 more years at $19.5 million, I feel like the Mets are going to give him 1 last year to regain his value, and if they do, they can move him since the Mets are retooling. But if they give him a full season and he doesn't bring it, I could see them eating that last year and letting him go on his way. Either way, this contract hasn't been good. A 1.3 WAR average is not something you want to pay $19.5 million a year. We'll see if Marte can revitalize his career next year. If not, this contract is going to be really bad. But also tied for 10th place with a 1.3 WAR average, we have Trevor Story, who signed a 6-year, $140 million contract on March 20th, 2022 with the Boston Red Sox. I'm just going to be on record to say I never got this contract from the day it was signed. If you're going to sign an infielder, you might as well sign the one you haven't signed long terms in Xander Bogaerts. And as we all know, Xander Bogaerts is now a Padre and not a Red Sox. But let's take a look at Trevor Story's contract. He has an average salary of $23.3. He does have an opt-out after 2025, but do I think he'll take it? No. But let's take a look at his stats. His first year, he hasn't been fully healthy. He played 94 games, but he did bring a 2.4 WAR because he was valuable on defense and he was league average hitting. But this previous year, he's been injured, and when he did play, he brought in a 48 WRC plus, hitting around 200.2 WAR. That's why he averaged out to a 1.3 average. And with the Red Sox on the hook for potentially 4 more years of this is a disaster, especially given the fact that they didn't get to sign Xander now. They would have just used that money towards Xander. Who knows where the Red Sox would be at. But this contract, I will say, can quickly become an albatross because I don't see Trevor Story recovering. He always had the Coors factor, and that's why I didn't get this signing, because even his last year in Coors, he had a 98 WRC plus. That's not something you should be signing long term. But the Red Sox have been making bad decisions lately, and Trevor Story is definitely one of them. In 9th place, we have Hyun Jun Ryu, who brought in a 1.225 yearly WAR average. He's one of those people, if the pandemic season was a full length, he might not be on this list, but we live in reality. He signed a 4-year, $80 million contract with the Toronto Blue Jays on December 23rd, 2019. His contract is now off the books, but the 4 years he was there, he brought in a 1.9 WAR in the shortened season. Really good. He did 2.5 the following year. Also a very solid season. It wasn't nothing great, but you can't complain about 2.5 WAR. But then the final 2 seasons, he had injury issues, and from that he only accumulated a 0.1 WAR and a 0.4 WAR, which came to that 1.225 average. The Blue Jays just didn't get their bang for buck. Is this contract a complete albatross? No. Was it a bad contract? Yes, but this one I feel like if he was given a full 2020 year and had he been a little more healthy, it wouldn't be. But that's the thing, when you sign players through their age 36 season, they do get injured. So the Blue Jays would take this contract back if given the chance. Now, for 8th place with a 1.175 yearly WAR average, we have Yasmani Grandal, who signed a 4-year, $73 million contract with the Chicago White Sox on November 21st, 2019. This contract is now off the books as well. We take a look at the 4 years he was with the White Sox. His first year in the pandemic year was also good. He brought in 1.6 WAR. Then he had his All-Star 2021 season where he had a 3.6 WAR and 157 WRC plus. He was really elite. He did a complete 180 after that season and brought in negative WAR value, and he also brought in negative WAR value in 2023. So this contract started out really good, and he's another one. If he had a full 2020 season, he probably would have accumulated like 3 to 4 WAR, and he wouldn't be on this list. But because one of his better seasons was that shortened season, his WAR yearly average is not good. The White Sox did not get their return on investment that they wanted with an average salary of 18.25. I don't blame the White Sox for this one because Grandal was really good and he also was an all-star one of these years. Sometimes players just fall off randomly and I feel like Yasmani Grandal is one of those. Coming in 7th place with a .9 yearly WAR average, we're now getting into the really bad deals. We have Anthony Rendon, who signed a 7-year, $245 million contract, the Los Angeles Angels, on December 11th, 2019. This one's kind of an infamous contract at this point. He signed through 2026, his age 36 season, and Rendon's another one of those people who in the shortened season, he produced really well. He had a 2.5 WAR, 152 WRC plus. But in all of these years since, he's been injured, but when he has played, he's produced a .1 WAR, .8, and .2. He's only had one season with a WRC plus above 100. He also has 3 more years left in this deal. This contract is an albatross at this point because it has a yearly average of $35 million. Don't get me wrong, Anthony Rendon was one of the best players in baseball when he signed this deal, but a lot of these deals, they just end up biting you in the foot. If you're going to extend anyone for this long, sign your young franchise player. Don't go in free agency and do this because you're going to live to regret it like the Angels have with Anthony Rendon. This is one of the worst contracts in baseball. Coming in at 6th place, we have Dallas Keuchel with a .73 yearly WAR average as he signed a 3-year, $55 million contract with the Chicago White Sox. His contract actually expired after 2022. But if we take a look at his transactions, he didn't finish all 3 years with the White Sox. They released him on May 31st and he bounced around where he found a home with the Twins. But either way, let's take a look at his stats. He was also another person that did well in the shortened season. He produced a .7 WAR, but he had a 5.28 ERA. He was not a good pitcher. And then he also wasn't good in the following year to where they released him. This is one with an 18.5 yearly average value. His contract wasn't an albatross. This is just a bad contract the White Sox wish they didn't sign. But it definitely was not a productive contract. But had he had a full 2020 season, maybe he would have made enough WAR to not be on this list, but I doubt it. Dallas Keuchel hasn't been a great pitcher in the 2020s. Now in 5th place with a .2 WAR yearly average, we have Madison Bumgarner, who signed a 5-year, $85 million contract with the Arizona Diamondbacks on December 15, 2019. He's been so bad, they released him this year even though he had all of this season and the following season. The Diamondbacks would rather have paid him this money than to have him on this roster. Let's see how bad he's been for them to want to do that. In the shortened season, he actually produced negative WAR, so he's happy that season wasn't longer. And the year after that, he had a 1.4 WAR with a 4.67. He was like a number 5 starter, innings eater. But then the season after that in 2022, 4.88, .4 WAR. At that point, like I said, he's just someone that was eating innings. He became unplayable this year with a 10.26 ERA. He was released. No one has picked him up. He was so bad that the Diamondbacks would have rather eaten the rest of the $32 million on the contract than to keep playing him. And since the Diamondbacks aren't a team that spend that much, I would consider this an albatross for them. If it was like the Yankees or someone else that spent this, I wouldn't. But because the Diamondbacks haven't been spending money like that, having $18 million committed to someone that's bringing you .2 yearly WAR value, it's just not it. And at number 4, we have Steven Strasburg, who's brought 0.0 yearly WAR value. If you know what Steven Strasburg, he has been injured since this contract has happened. He signed a 7-year, $245 million contract with the Washington Nationals on December 19th, 2019. He signed through the 2026 age 37 season. But if we take a look at his numbers, since signing the contract, he's had under 30 innings pitched. That's why he hasn't even been able to accumulate a positive WAR or a negative WAR. He's just been here. It's very unfortunate. But because of this and because he hasn't really played or produced, this is the worst contract in baseball with a $35 million average salary. It's just unfortunate that injuries happen. He was drafted by the Nationals. They won a World Series with him, so they wanted to keep him for the long haul. But it ended up biting him in the butt. But we'll see. But it looks like Steven Strasburg is going to have to early retire. It's just very unfortunate. Coming in at 3rd place, we have Mike Moustakas, who has produced a 0.2 .2 yearly WAR average. He signed a 4-year, $64 million contract on December 2nd, 2019 with the Cincinnati Reds. That averages to $16 million a year. But let's take a look at his stats. He had .5 WAR in the pandemic season, so maybe it'd have been longer. He could have gotten to 1.5 or 2. But even if he then produced a negative .5 WAR, then negative 0.4, and then also negative 0.4. That's why he ended up being negative value over the course of the contract. He was so bad that the Cincinnati Reds decided to designate him for assignment with the last year. They would have rather eaten the $16 million than continue playing him. He ended up signing with Colorado and being traded to the Angels, but either way, this is the contract the Reds wish they would have had back, because the Reds don't spend money, and yeah, it's $16 million, but to give $16 million to negative value, it's just not it. But luckily for them, it's no longer on their books. Coming in at number 2, this is another contract I think is one of the worst in baseball now. We have Kris Bryant, who has produced a negative 0.3 yearly WAR average. He signed a 7-year, $182 million contract with the Colorado Rockies on March 18th, 2022. This is another one of those contracts I never got from the jump because the Rockies were rebuilding. They didn't have a good team. So by the time they built a good team, Kris Bryant would have already been older and declining. But even before that, he has an average salary of $26 million. He's been injured in back-to-back seasons. The first season he produced .6 WAR. When he was healthy, 125 WRC plus. That's something you expect from Kris Bryant. But this past season, he had a 73 WRC plus. He's been bad on defense. Now he's bad on offense. So he produced a negative 1.2 WAR. But keep in mind, they still have him for 4 more years until he's 36. If Kris Bryant can't get healthy or figure it out, this is, like I said, the worst contract in baseball. They're either going to have to trade him with prospects attached in order for someone to take on this contract, or they're going to have to eat half of it. Whatever they're going to do, this is a contract that is a complete albatross. I think this is one of the worst contracts in baseball currently, and unless Kris Bryant really has a resurgence, I don't know what the Rockies are going to do. But for a team that hardly spends, and when they do spend, they spend it as bad as this, it's just a complete L. And lastly, I think the number 1 on this list is going to surprise a lot of people, but we have Avisel Garcia, who has produced negative 0.5 yearly WAR value. He signed a 4-year, $53 million contract with the Miami Marlins on November 28th, 2021. He is potentially signed through 2026, but if the Marlins do decline it, which they seem like they will, they have to pay him $5 million. That's why it's 4 years, $53 million, or it could be 5 years, $60 million if they do accept a club option. But if we take a look at his stats, we know they're not. He's produced negative 0.7 WAR and negative 0.3. He's had a WRC plus of 63 and a WRC plus of 46. Yes, he's been injured, not fully there, but when he's played, he's been bad. And for a team like the Miami Marlins that don't spend, you know it kind of stopped them from wanting to spend even more. They're like, look, we spent money and it's bringing us negative value. I didn't get this contract from the start because I'm not for signing average to good players for extended years, because as you see with his stats, he has 1 good year then 1 bad year. That's not someone you want to sign year to year. Maybe a 2-year deal I'd be comfortable. Signing him to this contract wasn't the best idea, but luckily it's only $13 million, so it's not something that's going to completely damage a franchise, but it's a bad contract. So yes, those have been the worst 13 contracts in baseball over the course of the last 5 years on the basis of a yearly WAR value. You guys let me know in the comment section. Who are you surprised that was on this list? Who do you think should have been on it and I might have forgotten them? What contract on this list do you think teams regret the most? And what contract do you think, if it wasn't for injuries, it actually could have been good? Or if the pandemic season was fully extended, their numbers could have been different and they weren't on the list. I would love to hear it. But yeah, with free agency looming this year, we know some team's going to get reckless with their money, and then they're eventually going to be on this list the next time I make it. But as you know, with Paint the Black Baseball, I'm going to give you consistent commentary and analysis, so I make sure to subscribe, turn the notification bell for all my videos so you can like and participate in the comment section. I hope you have a great day.